Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to final day of Africa Comes Week. I hope you're like so excited as I am. Of course, I don't know if the excitement levels are at 80, 100, 110, 200, but I guess we'll just check around the room to see how everyone is feeling. And I hope you all are feeling great. It's weekend. So yeah, we're here to close off really strong on the Africa Coms Communications Week. And of course, this session is hosted by Imagination Cameroon, a public relations firm, which drives, the narrative of, African inclusion, uniqueness, just generally creating a space where all platforms are being used, maximized, stakeholders across, the African continent, and particularly from Cameroon, where we're from, on the map. And we're glad to have you all here with us. On this session, our topic today for our session is the value in leveraging the African narrative, telling it the African way. So, telling our story just how we want it to be told. On this call with us, and I'm so honored to have with us here, we have Buki Judge Taylor, Managing Director of the Robert Taylor Media Limited Company. We have Elodie Mbida with us. She's the Director of the publication for Now Media. We have Jesse Apindongo, General Manager of Easy Group, and of course myself moderating this session, Velvita Vivan, co-foundation. So I'll just do a quick check-in first with everyone. I'll start with, well, let's do it a little nicely. Let me start with Jesse because he's the only guy on our panel. So hi, Jesse, how are you doing today? I'm not sure we can hear. Hi, Jesse, are you there? Okay, I think Jesse froze. Internet works when it works. So, and that's the interesting part about this African narrative that we're going to dive into. I see Elodie is unmuted. Elodie, how are you doing today?
Hello, Vilvita, ça va très bien, merci. La journée se passe bien et commence bien et je suis très contente d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui.
Great,
Hello.
great.
Hello, Belvita. She basically said that she's very happy to be with us today. So she's a lead leader, the publication director for Now Media.
Okay, great. Buki, are you here with us? How are you doing today?
I am here with you, trying to fix myself a cup of tea while we carry on. But I'm doing extremely well. I'm very honored to be here amongst every one of you. Great to meet everyone as well.
Nice to have you. I don't know if you have Jesse back or maybe the internet is still playing up on this one.
Yes, it's still,
okay, hi Jesse. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks. Sorry, the internet is a little bit playing games, but I'm trying to stabilize it. But I'm good. I'm doing very well. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So just so we can quickly go over what our session will look like today, we'll just have an introductory word, of course, just to introduce you all and have the chance to hear from you, what you do, what space you're clearly telling the African narrative through. And then after that, we're just going to have like a session on defining the African narrative. That will take us about 12 minutes. Then we'll have, Africa resource utilization, which will take us about 15 minutes. And then we'll close off strongly, of course, with, enhancing the African narrative, of course, and then a Q&A session. But I'm sure you might have received, our just a brief. Our session will really be, open-ended. We want it to be as open as possible. The questions will be coming back and forth, and I will just be, throwing the questions at anyone in our panel, and you're free to hop in or, comment or add need to add. So I'll start off, of course, by introducing our first panelist, which is Bukky George Taylor, MD of Nigeria's leading PR company, a strategic communications and special events expert, public speaker, and entrepreneurial coach. She has a wealth of experience in conveying relatable and unique brand stories to targeted audiences, communities, and stakeholders. Bukky's passion for telling positive African stories through her works and her belief in positive storytelling, of course, via innovative channels, significantly redefining the African narrative, which is why we're here. And of course, we know her for her directorship on the Lagos Today newspaper. So thank you again, Bukky. Welcome. We have Elodie, who is the co-founder and director of publication for Now Media, and the first platform in French-speaking Africa specializing in news and the for communications professionals. She has a focus on public relations, communication, crisis management. She covers, development of different agencies in the media and in this part of the continent, which is the French, part of Africa. And, she's obviously, with the wealth of her experience, been invited, to cover narratives around public relations, communication, crisis management, and of course, female leadership. What's Africa with a narrative without strong, powerful women like Elodie and Bukky we have? And of course, on our panel, we have with us Jesse Happy-Ndogo, CEO and General Manager of one of Africa's central leading communications company. He's a writer, a motivational speaker, experiential marketing expert, translator, and voiceover artist. Interesting. He possesses avid skills in championing below-the-line activations, events, print, audio, visual. And as we introduced him, he's the general manager of Easy Group. So just a quick testing. I want to check, what are your expectations? Starting with you, Jesse, what are your expectations from this session or from all? Jesse, are you with us? Okay, I think the internet is not Jesse's friend today. Bukky said the internet is good when it's good and it's bad when it's bad. Okay, so Bukky, I'll come right to you. What are your expectations from this call? Just tell me what you're feeling. What are your expectations generally?
Well, I think that, we've all gathered here to discuss something that's extremely important, and which is defining our own narrative. Our agency is the official comms agency for Dubai Tourism in Nigeria. And from working with them, I have realized the amount of effort that they've put into working with PR agencies in different countries across the world to control their narrative and to positively tell their own stories. And I think that this is something that all of the countries in this continent need to adapt to, in that it's important to tell our own stories. I'm not saying, we don't have negative stories or we don't have any issues as a country or as a people, but I believe that everyone does. But then it's almost a bit disheartening that we forget to highlight some of the most amazing and positive stories that come out of our continent as a whole. And I think that it's about time that almost every country, or if not every country, should start to look at positively and intentionally putting their best foot forward. You can see that in some countries like Ghana with their tourism and I think it's called the year of the return and things of that nature. I think it's time for everyone to follow suit. So this seminar and this event that you put together is extremely important. I think that you have the exact right people in the room to have this conversation, and hopefully, we're able to take it further.
Fantastic. I'm glad that you used the word intentional. because generally when we're having these conversations on, the African narrative, it almost seems like it's a global topic that just seems far-fetched, and people just, are waiting for somebody else to, or somebody else with a bigger profile to hop on board. But then, the question here is how intentional are we in our different sectors, making sure that we are driving the narrative that we want out there. And I would like to hear from Elodie. Maybe she can just tell us what her expectations are, and just a brief overview, especially what she does. Elodie?
Yes. De ce webinaire, je pense qu'il faudrait que les gens retiennent que déjà, c'est important de prendre notre narratif en main, ça c'est vrai, et c'est aussi pour ça qu'on est tous réunis ici, mais également qu'il faut poser des actions, il faut écrire. On a sur le panel, on a 4 super profils, et chacun dans son domaine, en fait, contribue à cela. Et je pense aussi qu'en sortant de là, il faut qu'on se dise, oui, on parle de récits africains, oui, on parle de narratif africain, comme disait Bouki, il faut raconter des histoires positives, mais aussi il faut raconter des histoires qui sont adaptées à chaque pays et à chaque culture. L'Afrique, c'est pas, on a tendance à dire, l'Afrique, c'est pas un pays, c'est un continent. Et donc, dans le continent, on a 54 pays. Si on inclut la diaspora, on peut dire qu'il y en a 55. Ça me fait penser à AAC 55. Et donc, se dire qu'il faut adapter des récits qui correspondent à chaque pays et que dans chaque pays aussi, il y a des cultures différentes. Donc, on parle de récits africains, oui, mais avec des particularités, avec les différences, les cultures, les mœurs, les coutumes, etc., pour faire en sorte qu'à la fin, ce récit africain englobe tout cela et que chacun ait ce storytelling qui lui corresponde au plus près. Donc voilà.
I don't know if the translation is working now. Bookie, can you just confirm that you got that? Because Bookie, is the translation fine for you?
I'm not sure that I got the translation, but
it's working. The translation is working.
Okay, it is working. Okay.
Okay, so I'll just jump right to Jesse. Jesse, you tell us how you're feeling, and I'll just hop right at the very first question of our session. What do you think is an African narrative, in your opinion? And, how are you feeling, first of all?
Well, I think Elodie said something brilliant about the fact that it's 54 or 55 countries. And I think we need to, first of all, move back a little bit from move back a little bit from the word Africa and begin to understand that Africa is the result of everybody being involved. What I'm trying to say is that if we are in a team and we keep talking about a team, at some point we forget that we're a member of the team and that we're actually contributing to something. So I think we need to let go. Everybody's part of Africa. Africa is the future. I think we've passed that stage where we're trying to fight the brand. I think the biggest challenge now is understanding what piece of the puzzle each African is. Because when we talk about narrative, we only see the global scale, we only see how we need to control things. But if I'm an African and I'm working in Bamenda and I have a farm, what the question I should ask myself is, what can I do to get the story out there? And getting the story out there is not only about trying to brand things and things like that. It's really about trying to get the story out there, because the challenge we have is that we don't even have it. We don't even have enough content out there, before trying to control or edit or adjust. There's not enough. When you walk into libraries here, to get a book by a Cameroonian author is a hustle. So I think we need to move back a little bit and understand that, okay, Africa is good, the narrative is good and all of that. But on the internet, everybody is a contributor, and what kind of content are we all producing for then Africa as a whole to make sense? So I think that we need to really, each person needs to start asking himself, what is the content I've put out there today? It's only when we think about what we contribute as individuals that our country, first of all, and then Africa is going to make sense in the whole world.
Oh, nice, nice. I like that you said that, everybody is a contributor. And I'm sure those of everyone who's joining us here is really intrigued about each and every one of you who's on this call's personal stories and how you as business owners, as narrative changers, have, positioned yourselves in a way that they can also emulate because, we're not here to say everybody's on the same pedestal like you're saying, but your story can definitely inspire another story. So maybe I should just go to Elodie to ask, Elodie, in your opinion, what would you say is an African narrative in terms of the space that you're working in, public relations and working with other media? How have you experienced different media telling the story, and where are the gaps that you think that people can improve on?
Alors, du côté des médias, les histoires sont déjà... Nous, si on a décidé déjà d'être dans le métier, dans les domaines de la communication et des relations publiques, c'est parce qu'on s'est rendu compte que c'est un secteur où on a des experts qui ont du potentiel énorme, qui font du très beau travail, mais qui ne sont pas valorisés. Et donc, c'est par rapport à cette problématique-là que Naol Media naît. Et les médias font du travail formidable, mais il faudrait qu'au niveau du continent, il y ait des médias forts qui soient portés par des Africains, qui soient créés par des Africains et qui racontent nos histoires avec nos outils de communication et de notre manière. Et donc, au niveau de Naol Media, c'est vraiment cet objectif qu'on s'est donné, de créer ce storytelling de valorisation de nos métiers, de créer ce storytelling de mise en avant des professionnels du secteur. Diès est ici présent, on l'avait interviewé l'année dernière en temps de Covid pour savoir comment ils se sont adaptés au niveau d'Easy Group pour faire face à l'événementiel qui était perturbé avec la COVID-19. Et ça, c'est important. L'article de Diès fait partie des articles qui ont été énormément lus et les gens se sont dit, ah oui, voilà comment ils ont fait pour pouvoir s'adapter au contexte camerounais où on sait que l'événementiel prend une grosse part de marché. Et ce n'est pas des personnes étrangères qui peuvent venir le faire parce qu'il faut s'adapter aux réalités locales. Et donc, c'est comme ça, en fait, qu'on ne pourra que impulser une vision positive et mettre en avant nos métiers et inspirer aussi des générations futures parce que le but, c'est que demain, un étudiant qui est en communication puisse se dire « J'aimerais avoir un parcours comme Bouki, comme Diès, comme Delvita et pour cela, voilà le chemin à suivre, voilà la voie à suivre. » Donc, les médias sont là pour créer des histoires positives, pour faire du storytelling et pour occuper la place parce que la nature a horreur du vide et si on n'occupe pas la place, une personne d'autre le fera et ne le fera peut-être pas de la bonne manière et avec les bonnes personnes.
Nice, nice. Elodie actually mentioned something, especially about, positioning ourselves and eating up the space, because that's how we like to call it, like, invading this space and not leaving any stone unturned. But you also mentioned something about COVID-19, and I'm sure there were a lot of challenges, and especially, we hear a lot about how the media space, because everything is online now, and the space looks very busy, like there's a lot happening. So I want to ask Bouki this, you've worked with Dubai Tourism and other, agencies, and you've worked on massive campaigns, but the space is quite competitive. Like how, in a time like now that everybody is trying to be online, everybody's trying to tell a story, how has your structure been impacted by COVID-19, positive or negative, and what would you say are the implications it has had on, your business as a whole?
As anyone would agree with me, the pandemic was quite shocking for all of us. I still remember where exactly I was and what wine I was drinking when we heard that we were getting locked down. Luckily for me, technology is a big part of my agency. And so we were able to really adapt. I mean, shutting down the office, sending everyone home, communicating via Slack, having meetings via Zoom are things that we had already started doing. And then, of course, thank you to very many organizations like the Public Relations Society of America and the Canadian Public Relations Institute. A lot of people were having a lot of discussions around and what kind of activities we needed to be paying attention to, and how we were going to prepare our clients to communicate during COVID. So we spent a lot of time educating. We spent a lot of time trying to find ways to make sure that our clients were still relevant. If they were doing physical offerings, we were transitioning to digital offerings. So for example, one of our clients is an amazing medical hospital called Palon Hospital. With some of our conversations with the hospital's MD, they decided to convert one of their locations to a COVID center, where they were treating, some heavy, serious cases. And that gave us opportunities to tell those kinds of heroic stories. Someone deciding to turn their general hospital into a COVID center and being the first and only hospital that took someone off the ventilator successfully. So I think that COVID was also a time for all of us to reflect. It was also a bit of a downtime for us to get our processes tight as a company. So I know a lot of people went back looking at their policies, looking at their structure, getting things done. One of the things that I did, because I'm I'm one of those people that just can't sit still. I feel like there's so much going on. And so COVID really showed me pepper. There are lots of pepper. So I decided to start something called Connect with Buki. 30 minutes, free sessions. Tell me about your business and I'll tell you what I think and give you some PR tips and some strategies and things like that. Clients were born out of that little freebie and whatnot. And I think, all of it is just being able to adapt and organizational resilience and just not, taking a beating when anything happens and saying, okay, COVID's happened, I can't function, I'm down. No, it's okay. So what do we need to do to adapt and get to the next move? And I think a lot of us, we're all here today. So congratulations to everyone for being resilient and being able to adapt.
That's so interesting, because innovation is one of the key things we don't seem to realize how important it is when we're hit by a crisis or when something comes up, because now you have to think about 10,000 other ways which your business has to function. You probably have to go back to your drawing board on your business plan. And Jesse is here and he works on below the line activations. And obviously with COVID movement restrictions, I'm really intrigued. I want to know how this worked for your business.
The interesting thing is that COVID was something that apparently didn't create new problems. Apparently, COVID strengthened those that were already strong and weakened those that were already weak. And I think that we all have a few things we do. And when the pandemic hit, we decided, I think everyone decided to focus on what they do best. And what happened with Easy Group was that we have an organization that is organized. We like to consider ourselves as an experiential marketing company and not just a BTL company. So the fact that we see our business from that point of view implied that we had done investments that can enable us to do several things that are all linked to marketing, to experiential marketing. So we had invested in equipment, we had invested in printing equipment, we had invested in events equipment, but we had also invested in audiovisual equipment, so pictures, videos, content creation, and all of that. So what happened during the pandemic is that we had an explosion of online request servicing, live streaming. We did meetings with people connected in 16 countries. We had even court hearings. We had to do court hearings. We just did a couple of other things. And just last week, my colleague was joking and saying that this live streaming service that we used to offer for free is now the star of the house. But basically, the first thing I would say is that it's important to question your structure, the structure of your organization. It's not because you're making $1 billion francs CFA or $1 billion that you have a proper structure. There are many companies that existed 10 years ago. I mean, just 10 years ago, we were all on Yahoo Messenger, we're all on BBM, you know, they all gone today. Nokia was the hype, you know, and they all gone today, and we've actually forgotten they existed. And that's just the end at the end of the day, it's really about questioning yourself. You know, this thing I'm doing, what's the purpose of what I'm doing? And am I structured in a way that if anything happens, I will still be able to keep on with this? And I would say the second thing is it just like she mentioned, we started this thing called Corona. It's a mixture of the word learner and Corona, and we, you know, started conversations. We brought people from different business sectors together, both online and meetings, you know, and it really helped on the branding level to put our brand up high. And clients were happy that despite the challenge, we bring them together, you know, very few people, 20 people, and have a conversation about what is the next phase going to be. So, you know, historically, many amazing brands have been born during and from crisis. So it's just about the way we look at things.
So I see everybody is, you know, innovating and bending over and pulling out new strategies from under their sleeves. I'm really impressed. I don't know about, you know, our viewers and our listeners, but I'm definitely sure everybody's like, you guys were ready for this COVID thing. It looks like you guys didn't even expect it. I mean, even if you didn't expect it, but you guys sound, everyone seemingly sounds like they're happy COVID came. But you know, I'm glad that you're innovating in a space where it kind of looks like, and I can almost see how the trends kind of have shifted, and you're innovating as you're going. But my question is the market, like we're talking about an African narrative now, is the market, in your opinion, Jesse, let's just stay on you, is the market ready, especially in terms of innovation and creativity wise? Is the African market ready for these innovations?
You know, I look at marketing from a point of view where Steve Jobs usually mentioned in an interview that no market study was done to launch the iPhone, you know, and he mentioned that if we went to people when Henry Ford invented the car, if you went to people to ask them what they need, they would have said faster horses. You know, nobody would have said I need a car. So I see marketing as a tool of game-changing tool. People don't have to be ready. We get them ready. You know, we understand them beyond what they say. We understand them beyond what they believe. The market was ready for an iPhone. I don't think the market was ready for WhatsApp. I think that we're talking about the African narrative, right? And I think that sometimes people from other continents tend to understand our needs better, or sometimes they don't even create it for us, but we just adapt it because there's nothing that we have locally. Despite the fact that mobile money was created by someone from another country, that's a classic success story of something created for the African market, for our problem, and adapted to our needs. So beyond the PR side of things, you know, and the marketing side of things, I think that everyone should look. The narrative starts with what we do, with how we create an impact around us. Because you know, you can't create a story if there's nothing if there's nothing said, you can't say anything. If there's nothing done, you can't say anything. So I think we should increase the number of things we do, improve the things we do around us, make it useful, appealing. If people are not going to tell you what they need, you need to understand that, okay, this is what people need, invest yourself, give you everything. And in one way or other, it should be able to work. And if it doesn't work, then you learn, you know, and move forward. So I don't think we should wait for the things to be ready. I think we should look at things, understand what needs to be done, and just get to building.
Great. You said we should be ready. Hey, we should look at what's being done. For someone like Elodie, I'm coming to you, Elodie. For someone like you who is in a sector where it's almost like there's so much information. People like Jesse are throwing out new innovations and they're trying to get through your platforms, and people like Bookie are, you know, changing the whole narrative for us in terms of how mentorship works online for businesses. How does your structure combine all these innovations and put into one place? And how are in terms of feedback, would you say the people who are following Now Media are intrigued by more of this storytelling, or they're just not interested? Was it a hard way to integrate, or was it easy to tell innovative stories?
Alors, bien sûr, les gens sont intéressés par le travail que font Now Media, sinon on ne serait pas également sur ce panel aujourd'hui. Et comme Jess disait, c'est à nous de créer le besoin auprès des personnes. Aujourd'hui, ce qui est recherché, c'est du travail de qualité, c'est du contenu de qualité, et c'est vraiment sur ça, premièrement, que nous travaillons sur Now Media. Ça veut dire que si Jess vient nous voir ou si Bouki vient nous voir pour qu'on travaille ensemble, nous, en tant que médias, on va réfléchir à des stratégies de contenu qui vont permettre à la fois de valoriser le travail qui est proposé, mais également qui vont intéresser l'audience, parce que c'est la qualité qui doit primer sur la qualité, et c'est ça qui va aussi contribuer à écrire ce narratif africain. Si je prends des exemples beaucoup plus concrets, au sein de Now Media, puisqu'on s'est rendu compte, c'est pour ça qu'on est sur la francophone, on s'est rendu compte qu'il manque du contenu sur les métiers que nous avons du côté de l'Afrique francophone. On a réfléchi à des stratégies de création de contenu au-delà de la valorisation des acteurs. Au tout début de l'année, on a sorti les tendances en relations publiques, où on a invité des acteurs de RP et on leur a demandé pour cette année quelles sont les différentes tendances qui vont sortir et quels sont les conseils que vous pouvez donner aux entreprises, que vous pouvez donner aux personnalités publiques pour avoir des stratégies adaptées à l'année 2021. Ça, il faut le penser, il faut faire du brainstorming, il faut s'asseoir pour se dire, bon, qu'est-ce qu'on peut proposer? Et ça fait partie des contenus qui fonctionnent. Et après, pour les années d'après, on va les améliorer, parce que le but, c'est de tout le temps être innovant. On parle là de créativité, d'innovation, et se dire l'année prochaine, qu'est-ce qu'on propose de plus que ce qu'on a proposé cette année. Récemment, on a sorti Now Media 40, qui est un listing qui rassemble 40 femmes impactantes, inspirantes, des métiers de la communication et des médias en Afrique francophone. Ça n'a jamais été fait avant, ça n'existe pas, parce qu'on s'est dit, il y a des femmes qui font des choses, généralement on dit la communication, c'est le travail de l'ombre. Oui, ok, mais il faut aussi que ces acteurs de la communication soient mis en avant, que leur travail soit valorisé pour qu'on comprenne ce qu'ils font, parce que la communication est souvent le parent pauvre, parce que les gens ne comprennent pas. Là, on dit communication, mais il y a plusieurs métiers dans la communication. Il y a les relations publiques, les relations presse, la com de crise, la com événementielle. Et donc, nous, notre but, c'est de travailler pour créer du contenu qui va permettre d'impacter, d'inspirer et qui va permettre de rassembler tout cela. Et toujours dans la création de contenu, on travaille aussi, là, on va lancer le programme SAM, donc c'est les stages académiques mentorés, parce qu'on s'est dit, quand les jeunes viennent faire des stages, ok, d'accord, ils viennent faire des stages, mais ils ont besoin également d'être accompagnés par des experts qui sont passés par des étapes, qui ont eu des expériences, pour pouvoir voir, ça peut être un journaliste, ça peut être un professionnel des RP, pour voir aussi comment sur le terrain ça se passe et comment ils peuvent faire pour améliorer leur travail au quotidien. Donc, on a vraiment, le public est prêt, mais le public est prêt et est prêt à accepter pour poser du travail, s'il y a du travail de qualité qui est fait derrière. Comme on dit souvent, je ne vais pas consommer camerounais parce que c'est un Camerounais qui propose, je vais consommer camerounais parce que le produit, le service qui m'est proposé est de qualité, parce que l'exigence est présente, parce que le professionnalisme est là. Et vraiment, c'est ce qu'on s'attelle à faire au quotidien au sein de Now Media. Donc, tous les contenus qu'on propose, donc tout ce qu'on fait, on se dit toujours contenu, qualité, exigence et professionnalisme. Donc, pour conclure dessus, oui, les experts sont là, ils sont présents, mais on fait toujours tout pour que la qualité soit présente. Et c'est très important d'insister dessus. Le narratif ne sera qu'impactant si le travail est de qualité, si le contenu est de qualité, que les stratégies sont de qualité.
I'm really happy that you mentioned quality, because like Jesse mentioned, it's not just about, I mean, we already know, we're talking about African narrative. Everyone is like, yeah, we already know there's resources. Africa is a new place to go. Africa, yeah, almost we've established that. But then what we've not established is what the benchmark is and where we're setting the bar in terms of the kind of stories that we're projecting out there. And I'm coming to you, Bucky, because I know that you've been able to work on different brands. And Elodie has mentioned, about the fact that quality is important. So I'm just intrigued because, we always have this question about, is there a difference between the Western and African narrative? Are we borrowing concepts from, or are we benchmarking? Is that our benchmark? And what do we consider as quality, especially for someone like, like you who is working, on different brands? And if so, if there is a benchmark, how do you translate the local market needs with the culture and everything else to make sure that the quality still remains top notch without watering it down? What would you say? How have you worked on that?
There's when I speak to my staff sometimes, it's something I kind of phrase it and I say globally African. What does this mean? I mean authentically African global standards. I think that that's kind of where, we're interested in that, bringing quality of work that would be globally accepted, but very culturally relevant at the same time. We're not trying to westernize our stories or culture, but at the same time, we want it to be at par with everyone else. I think that if you take a look at my newspaper, The Lagos Today, in the style of our storytelling and what we've done, you'll see that it is very globally African and globally Nigerian, if that makes any sense, in that our stories are culturally, appropriate, but then for sure of global standards. In terms of benchmarking, I think it is somewhat important. I'm not sure if you've been to these parts, West Africa, and Nigeria, and I definitely invite you to come anytime. You find where it's a common language to say, oh, but it's Nigeria, or oh, it's the Nigerian way, and so therefore, if it's substandard, then that's okay. And I'm like, no, it's not okay. I've seen a lot of amazing things come out of the country that are globally appropriate, if you might say, but very authentically Nigerian. I'm not sure if that answers your questions because it were kind of...
And I'll just follow up. Obviously, yes. You just said globally. I liked how you put it, like authentically African, but global. So it's like you're saying to be able to be competitive in this space that everybody else is operating, you want to make sure that as much as you want to tell the African story, you want to make sure that our culture is being represented. You also want to make sure that you're the best. You're the best and you're on top of your game. How challenging has that been? And I know you come from a market like Nigeria where, there's such a, and I love it. I love Nigeria because you guys have such a strong narrative, but there are multiple cultures, there are multiple languages, there are multiple people that you have to integrate. And one of the things Jesse mentioned is, there's this plethora of so many things happening, but how do you stay consistent working with all of these people? How hard has that been? Has it been hard or good for you?
So, I mean, if you know the country very well, then you know that everyone speaks English here. There's a lot of people that don't even know how to speak their languages. There's differences in the cultures and the languages and things like that, but there is one way that we do communicate, whether it's English, whether it's broken English, pidgin English, whatever it is that you like. So when it comes to telling stories sometimes with local brands, you'll find that sometimes we're passing on information across different channels and different platforms that speak different languages as well. So we're able to take any narrative and actually convert it just the same way I'm able to understand what Elodie's saying. And I don't know an ounce of French. I failed French in high school, yeah? But I can totally understand her thanks to the interpreter. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to get it. I'm very inspired by her. She's young. She reminds me of myself when I started and all of that. She's even sharper than me. But But I think that there are ways to totally disseminate information across different cultures. Technology is here and it's here to stay. What's most important for me in all of this is we have good stories to tell. And I feel that it is our responsibility to start to tell those stories. We have some of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And you know what it is with stories. Stories inspire, they move you forward. You read or see something and you're ready to go. If we had good stories, important stories, relevant stories coming out, if I was a criminal, I might second guess my job as a criminal and think about doing something positive because everyone is out there saving lives during COVID, and we have all these amazing African doctors. Not once did I see any narrative that came out of COVID talking about different doctors, heroes across Africa. I didn't see that. And we had that, you know, even down to our local remedies. And you know, we saw some of those stories coming out saying, listen, you're drinking this and you're getting cured. I was kind of happy about it. I'm like, okay, you know, promote our natural resources and things like that. And this was one of the reasons why we decided to form the Lagos Today newspaper. I personally wanted a platform that I could tell some very major stories. And so we're very intentional. Every week, 5 positive stories must come out. Journalists, go find it. Go find the stories. Throw them out there. I'm not saying that you shouldn't report that, you know, X, Y, and Z is happening here, but then please report some amazing things that's coming out of Nigeria as well. I'm tired. We're not all fraudsters. We're all not criminals. You know, we have some very sharp and bright people, you know.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
The stereotypes. I mean, you call a bank in the UK today and say, hi, I'd like to open an account. Oh, great. Where are you from? I'm like, okay, should I pull out my Canadian passport? I don't want Nigerian. These guys are gonna think I'm criminals right away. So when it comes to managing the reputation, I think there's a lot of intentional work that needs to be done. What I would really love to see is a cross-cultural connect with different platforms across the continent, with everybody being intentional about looking for positive stories from their various countries and actually putting it out there, and all of us supporting one another. Because no one's gonna tell the stories for us. Everyone's defining us, we're not defining ourselves. What does it mean to be African? And I think it's important for us to start to think about that.
I love that you said, you know, we have to be changing these stories for ourselves. I know it's so hard sometimes, you know, you don't know if being African is an issue, or, you know, sometimes you're like, should I say it, or how African am I?
So you'll be shocked, you'll see some US publications saying, local man starts t-shirt business in Brooklyn. What? We have 5 million t-shirt businesses in our backyard.
No, exactly.
You know? And they write this whole thing, you know, he started off, maybe he went to high school, but now he has this t-shirt business that's writing positive things. What did he do? Well, guess what? We have some of those amazing things as well.
We have more than those. We have, you know, people who, and it's so interesting because sometimes we always think that the narrative should be something really humongous. Like, we always feel that an African narrative has to be this, you know, somebody who has raised over 40 million in grants, or has been able to start a business that has employed over thousands and thousands of people. But, you know, like you're saying, the interesting part is the little things, like you're mentioning, that people are doing in their little communities that are changing lives. And those stories are some of the stories that we never get to hear. And the internet has helped us, yes, but it has also in some way, I feel, has shown and has painted this picture of where we should be and what kind of stories we should be telling. And it has, like you're saying, it has structure.
If you check out this Instagram, handle, I'm not sure if it's correct, I'm saying it right, it's called Citizens of New York or something like that. And it just highlights basic New Yorkers and their everyday lives. And
I think they've seen Humans of New York as well. Humans of New York.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Humans of New York.
Yes.
And it's all of, you know, it might look like nothing, but we're able to connect. We're able to understand. If you're a New Yorker, if you're in the States, if you've ever been, you're able to connect. And I think that I'm not waiting for the government to change the stories. I think we need to do it ourselves.
Yeah. I want to jump to Elodie because she tells some of these stories. That's her job sometimes. She's fishing and looking for this information. And I want to really ask her, Elodie, in your opinion, really, what platforms are we supposed to be looking at? What media should we be leveraging on to amplify these voices? You best know the space. You know who's talking where they should be talking, what they should be putting out there. But people don't know, and I'm sure many other people who are following on this score would like to know what platforms or what media can we leverage on to amplify African voices and African talent.
Déjà dans le média, parmi les plateformes pour valoriser les talents africains. Et en fait, ce qu'il faut comprendre, puisque là, on reste dans le cadre de la communication, si on prend les talents africains du secteur de la communication, ce qu'il faut déjà comprendre, c'est qu'il faut développer une communication qui nous ressemble. Il faut avoir une communication qui est adaptée à nos réalités. Il ne faut pas prendre des stratégies de communication et se dire on va les adapter, on va les dupliquer au niveau du continent africain ou au niveau des pays. Donc, c'est pas comme ça que ça va fonctionner. Et en termes de plateforme, moi, je dirais, c'est à chacun d'aller, c'est aussi, en fait, là, on parle de manière générale de nous en tant que créateurs de contenu pour changer le récit, mais c'est aussi à chacun d'aller vérifier les informations qui sont données et d'aller aussi chercher la plateforme qui correspond à ce qu'elle recherche. Et à travers ce travail et ce contenu qui sera proposé, elle sera à même de se dire là, j'irai et là, je n'irai pas. Et donc, par rapport aux conseils que je peux donner sur les plateformes, moi, je dirais aux personnes, allez sur des plateformes qui ont des informations qui correspondent à ce que vous voulez, vérifier cela. Et à nous, en tant que créateurs de contenu, nous, en tant que médias, on doit faire un travail de recherche, de vérification, d'éthique derrière et proposer, mais vraiment, j'insiste dessus, proposer du contenu de qualité. Ne pas faire des informations pour le buzz, ne pas faire des informations pour avoir des clics, pour avoir de l'audience et derrière, il n'y a pas de la matière. Non, parce qu'au bout d'un moment, le lecteur, il n'est pas bête, il va se rendre compte de ça et tout de suite, on va perdre en fait cette audience qui est super importante. Et en plus de parler, d'avoir du contenu de qualité, les communicants aussi doivent prendre la place, doivent plus prendre la parole, doivent plus occuper le terrain. Aujourd'hui, on a des gens, ils vont créer une page Facebook, une page Instagram. Est-ce qu'ils vont faire des belles photos? Ils vont faire 2-3 citations en communication qu'ils auront pris dans des livres ou alors qu'ils auront pris sur Internet et qui vont bien parler. Ils vont s'improviser coach ou consultant en communication, mais derrière, il n'y a aucun travail. Il n'y a pas de matière, il n'y a pas d'expertise, il n'y a pas de professionnalisme. Et donc, c'est là où les médias viennent pour mettre en avant donc, ces personnes qui travaillent véritablement. Les médias viennent pour créer du contenu et valoriser les vraies personnes qui travaillent et arrêter en fait qu'on ait tout le temps des scammers ou alors des profils qui ne sont pas du tout adaptés et qui vont faire une audience qui vont faire une très grosse audience et qui seront invités à prendre la parole sur des événements pertinents, mais qui n'ont pas du tout de plus-value. Et donc, par rapport à ça, nous, le message vraiment qu'on souhaite passer, c'est de dire aux communicants, la plateforme, par exemple, Now All Media est là, venez nous voir, occupons le terrain et racontons nos histoires avec notre façon de faire, racontons nos histoires avec nos outils et arrêtons de laisser des personnes prendre la parole, occuper le terrain alors qu'ils n'ont aucune légitimité, alors que leur réputation n'est pas basée sur du travail de qualité et vraiment poussons beaucoup plus loin. Et c'est aussi, j'ai envie de dire, c'est aussi aux communicants de s'approprier les plateformes médias, socio-communicants au niveau de l'Afrique francophone, c'est un peu tabou, mais du côté des anglo-saxons et de l'Afrique anglophone, pas du tout. Avoir un média ou bien occuper un média, ce n'est pas du tout tabou. C'est aussi à eux, en fait, de porter pour avoir des médias forts, des médias africains qui racontent nos histoires et qui sont portés par nous. Et vraiment, c'est vraiment important de faire passer ce message et de le dire, parce que si on laisse tout le temps que d'autres médias viennent prendre le terrain, viennent nous raconter des histoires à nos places, à la fin, on va encore se retrouver en étant le parent pauvre, on va encore se retrouver avec des personnes qui n'ont pas du tout lieu d'être là, qui vont être présents, et c'est nous qui allons être perdants dans l'histoire. Donc vraiment, misons sur des médias forts, investissons sur des médias africains portés par des voix africains, portés par des communicants africains qui vont valoriser nos métiers et les pousser beaucoup plus loin pour que demain, si on veut avoir un exemple d'un parcours en communication qui est une réussite, on vient sur le média en tant que référence et on se dit, tiens, on a telle personne. Si demain, on veut avoir des stratégies de communication qui ont cartonné sur l'année 2020 ou 2021, on puisse venir sur le média et on se dise, tiens, voilà des stratégies qui ont cartonné. Donc, créons du contenu de qualité, valorisons nos acteurs et surtout, portons nos médias, poussons-les loin pour avoir vraiment des médias forts, des médias puissants, des médias impactants, parce que le narratif, le récit, les médias sont on appelle le média le quatrième pouvoir. Donc, le narratif, le récit passe également par les médias. C'est pour ça qu'aujourd'hui, on se rend compte que avant, on présentait, par exemple, on présentait certains pays comme des pays Ebola. Et aujourd'hui, on se rend compte que ces pays, déjà, eux-mêmes font un travail pour changer leur histoire et également vont utiliser de l'influence pour changer leur histoire dans les médias pour que demain, si on parle du Cameroun, on se dise, ah bah oui, il y a un très bel événement qui est organisé au Cameroun dans le cadre de l'événement La Chaîne, par exemple. Et on va garder cette image en tête en se disant, tiens, il y a eu ça, telle que la culture camerounaise a été valorisée. Au niveau du Rwanda, la culture a été valorisée. Et ça passe par les médias et ça passe aussi par le digital. Et c'est pour ça que l'année dernière, il y avait certes le contexte du Covid. Et puis, on s'est dit, est-ce qu'on commence le média ou alors est-ce qu'on attend? Et là, on s'est dit, non, on va commencer parce qu'on a le digital qui nous permet de pouvoir le faire. On va commencer et puis au fur et à mesure, on va améliorer le travail, on va pousser plus loin et on va continuer. Donc, il y a les médias, le digital, et j'ai envie de dire pour ceux qui veulent contribuer au récit africain, c'est maintenant qu'il faut commencer. Arrêtons de repousser les échéances, ce n'est pas dans 3 ans, dans 5 ans, dans 10 ans, c'est maintenant. Si vous avez quelque chose à faire, prenez les moyens que vous avez à votre disposition. On est présent, on vous attend, c'est tous ensemble, tous réunis en tant que communicants, en tant qu'acteurs, qu'on pourra porter le métier, qu'on pourra aller plus loin, qu'on pourra créer du contenu. Donc, réunissons-nous, rassemblons-nous et allons avec les outils qu'on a. Chacun apportera du sien, chacun apportera de son expertise. Aujourd'hui, Now All Media existe parce qu'on a des communicants qui apportent du contenu sur la plateforme. C'est pas juste Elodie Mbida qui est Now All Media, non, c'est l'ensemble des personnes qui nous font confiance, qui nous proposent également du contenu, qui font Now All Media et qui portent Now All Media pour la suite. Donc, si vous souhaitez participer au récit africain, si vous souhaitez participer au récit de votre pays, venez et ensemble portons cela et continuons. Et si je continue toujours dans cette lancée, on a par exemple sur le média Tête d'affiche, qui est une rubrique où on valorise les acteurs de la communication d'Afrique francophone. Les personnes qui iront dessus verront que ce soit Salimata Sakho en Guinée ou alors Larek Moubouyi au Gabon ou Sena Boundia au Sénégal, on verra que oui, ils font tous de la communication, mais ils l'adaptent à chaque personne. Et ça, vraiment, c'est le plus important. Donc, utilisons les outils qu'on a, les leviers qu'on a et vraiment portons nos médias et allons plus loin pour participer au récit africain.
I love how you said, we have to use the resources that we have at hand. And you spoke about, how we could have changed our narrative using, the SHAN that we just recently organized. And thank goodness we have Jesse with us. And of course, he happens to have worked the African Nations Championship. Jesse, even just a brief, probably like 2 minutes, so that we can take questions from around the room. If you can tell us, how has it been? How was it like working on the African Nations Championship? How were you using the resources that were on ground with all the bottlenecks that we had, of course? And how do you think that might have changed the narrative for us as a country in Cameroon? Jesse? I don't know if we lost Jesse. Are you here? Oh, I think network is not doing us a favor. And the internet, the technology is good when it works.
Hello.
Are you here with us?
Hello, Viveka.
Yes.
At some point I stopped here. I didn't get the question.
Okay, so I was asking because Elodie mentioned things like, using the African Nations Championship to channel different narratives and using resources that we have on ground. And thank goodness we have someone like you who happen to have worked on, this championship. How was it like utilizing the resources that you had on ground, the different bottlenecks that you had, and how do you think this might have changed the narrative for us as a country, for Cameroon in particular?
Yeah, well, the good thing is that the event happened. It's amazing, but unfortunately, I don't feel like we understood, Cameroonians or the government or everybody understood the opportunity, because sometimes a story can be told, but we shouldn't forget that every story told has a purpose. You understand? So, like if a local media in America is having something about some guy doing T-shirts, it's probably because there is a long-term, and I think that it was good to have the championship here. It was the main competition, international competition, so it was easy for Cameroon. At our level, we fortunately for us, we have been part of a global alliance. So it's been 4 years that we are getting ready for this, and it was an interesting opportunity to see that locally it was good. Locally, there is a certain expertise, and it's interesting to see how the amazing feedback that came along. It was interesting to see how through this competition we were able to tell our story. The opening ceremony was an amazing showcase of our culture and what we do. And everything. Old nations, if I can put it that way. So they've been doing certain things for a very, very long time. And I fundamentally believe that it's important to reach out as well, reach out and understand, okay, what is being done out there that we don't have here? Because one thing, for example, in the events ecosystem, one thing that people don't realize is that to get certain things done, you might have the sound equipment, but the software is more important than the equipment itself, and it costs something. So we can complain about not doing certain things like abroad, but it takes certain investment, technical and human. So we should also understand that it's not just because we turn on our TV and we see everything going on BBC or France 24 that we can just go back home and get it done. Like, pourquoi vous faites seulement comme ça, machin, faites comme eux, do like them. No, it's not. It's not that simple. And I want to emphasize on this because I lived in South Africa for a while, and one of the learnings of the post-apartheid era is that the willingness to get Black people out there sometimes pushes us to make wrong decisions because they need the training. You know, you need the training to be able to do certain things. So yes, we want a Black person in the position, but let's make sure that he is trained, you know, and he has the resources and he understands what he has to do. And it has sometimes resulted, you know, people getting into jobs they're not fit for and corruption. But most of them are doing very well. That's just a learning. So what I'm trying to say is that we have an amazing competition, but there's much more we could have done with content. Technological wise, there's still a lot of things we were able to do, but we're actually lucky that Shan happened before Cannes because we saw what we need to do, how we need to invest. But we really should understand that if certain countries, companies, I will look at Elodie speaking, and tomorrow I launch a website and I want to do the same thing. You know, having a website is just it's not that simple. So I really think that we should also have that humble approach, and you know, put your African pride on the side and ask, you know, how do you guys do this? You know, what are the positive things? Just like China did with the States. You know, Chinese people went to America, Asia. They go to America, they learn for about 10, 15 years, and now when they opened up, it was an explosion. So I think that sometimes our pride, African pride, gets too emotional, you know, and less technical. And when people say, you know, we should have only Black people here, Black people there, no, sometimes the Black guy is not maybe equipped, but we can invest to get him equipped, and maybe tomorrow we can all Black, white, you know, the first time in history that Africa is hyped. You know, it's not the first scramble for Africa. It's not the first one in history. But what we do things that are not sustainable. You know, even with the content we create, sometimes we create content that is not sustainable enough. So after 1-2 years, it disappears. But other countries, what they do is that with time piles up to build beyond narrative story. We're building a legacy. So it's narrating at some point, it doesn't build up to something. So I really, really think that it's important that we ask ourselves, what is the legacy we try to build? And how do we narrate, you know, along the time and along the years for it to fit that narrative? Otherwise, we end up putting so much energy to have good content and no legacy.
Nice, Jesse. This is a legacy. Jesse, I think maybe you were part of your legacy. Who knows? Tomorrow we'll say, you know, we were part of the story. We were part of the building process. And speaking of legacy, I know that Buki is here with us. Buki, please just tell us. I read through your profile, and we see that you've worked on different Broadway, but interestingly, Fela, and I know that that's someone who has had quite a legacy, or quite a narrative, should we call it, over the years. And as Jesse mentioned, sometimes it's hard translating over time because we know where we want to, if we don't know where we want to go, we end up telling different stories and then people are lost in this narrative. And because we're speaking about leveraging on our stories and how we're supposed to be telling it and making sure that it stays true from start to finish, it must be a hard one. But tell me from your experience, how has it been like working with such, you know, on such a narrative, or, you know, such a personality, and you know, and what's the uniqueness, or what are the key takeaways that somebody can borrow from? Is Buki here with us, or I think we lost? Did we lose her? I hope not. If you guys can hear me, just let me know. Maybe it's me, or I'm not sure.
We can hear you. I think she probably had an issue. I can see her among the participants.
Oh, I think yeah, I think that network is really bad. But I'm going to. Oh, we lost her. But as we're closing off, for those of you who are following our session, we just want to say thank you, for joining our session on Image Nation. You know, leveraging on the African narrative. That's what we've been discussing all this while, and we've been speaking to Jessie, General Manager for Easy Group. We've been speaking to Elodie, Director for Publications for Now Media. We've been speaking to Buki, who just, unfortunately just left us, a managing director. So I just want to, close off because, we can have this conversation, yeah, on African narrative, and that will go on for like forever. We are going to be surely butting heads, and sometimes we're not going to agree on things before we come back to the drawing board. But one of the key things that I listened to and that I took out from all of the speakers is the intentionality of how intentional are we in making sure that we're pushing the narrative that we want out there. Because sometimes we're sitting somewhere and somebody else is reporting fire in the back of your house, and you're like, are they speaking about my neighborhood? Or, I know someone who was cracking a joke about, the about them reporting, a shootout in their neighborhood, and they read it online, and they're like, "But I've been in this house for forever. Where did they shoot?" So that is actually what happens, with the media space, is that sometimes it gets uncontrolled. But if we're not intentional, if we're not making sure that we know where we want to go with the story, it's very hard for us to actually catch it when somebody else tells it a different way, and everybody else will just continue as it goes and would have probably negative feedback or negative impressions about our own countries, about our own selves. And we're struggling now to change, like they say, we're trying to change the narrative. One of the difficulties, especially for us as Image Nation, is changing this narrative has been so hard because there's this thing that people already see, but we're trying to tell it another way. So having to, first of all, format brains to understand that that's where we're trying to go, and then put in the right information has been hard. I don't know if anyone has any questions. You can just drop them into the Q&A section, or just in the comment section, just so that we can pick it. If you want it to be specific for either Elodie, Buki, or Jessie, you can go ahead and specify who you want your question to go to. As we close off, I just want to have one last question to everyone, and of course, before your final thoughts. In your opinion, Elodie, what are the advantages of having a narrative? What are the advantages of having an African narrative or a specific narrative, especially in the field in which you operate? What would you say is the advantage of making sure that we have a narrative?
Alors, je ne vais pas être très longue parce qu'on a déjà tout dit tout le long du webinaire. L'avantage, c'est de porter nos histoires, de les raconter nous-mêmes. Jess a parlé tout à l'heure de legacy, un terme qu'il aime beaucoup utilisé. Le but aussi, c'est de laisser un héritage aux générations futures. Le but aussi, c'est que demain, les jeunes, parce que c'est aussi dans cette vision qu'on s'inscrit, les jeunes de la jeune génération, celle qui viendra après Elodie, après Diès, puissent avoir des exemples beaucoup plus concrets de ce qui se fait, de ce qui a été fait, de ce qui pourra se faire dans le futur. Donc, il faut vraiment, dans le cas des médias, le secteur où je suis, arrêter d'aller tout le temps dans les médias internationaux et peut-être plus venir vers des médias africains, investir dans des médias africains, miser sur des médias africains. Et ce n'est que comme ça, c'est en ayant que des médias forts qu'on pourra réellement porter notre histoire, écrire notre histoire dans le temps et arrêter que ce soit tout le temps les autres qui le font. Donc, vraiment, c'est une question d'héritage et au-delà même de la valorisation et du récit africain, c'est surtout l'héritage qu'on doit laisser pour les générations futures.
Nice. Jessie, maybe your thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, like she said, I'm all about the legacy, and if we're doing it so that people that come after us can take it further. Vevita, I like to tell the interns that we receive here, or anyone starting a career here at Easy Group, is that I tell them that we don't work, we are building. And you're not starting a career, you're carrying on with the legacy. So we shouldn't be a continent where history repeats itself. You understand? We should be a continent where we are growing. So at some point, we should stop trying to change the narrative, stop trying to meet global standards, and we start creating our standards. We start creating our narrative, our story, and then the world will try and catch up to that. Because at the end of the day, there is no global standard. What you call global standard is just what some guy has done, which is really good and respected and appreciated, and everybody at a global scale respects that. You know, everybody follows that. That's why you would have the German standard, the French standard, the American standard, the Nigerian standard, the South African standard, and Ghanaian standard, etc. So I think that we should stop trying to catch up. You know, try to catch up and trying to follow up. No, we should create our own standards, and it should become the standard that everybody else wants to live up to. And at the end of the day, it would enable, and that doesn't take a generation. It takes some time. You know, it could take 100 years, it could take 50 years, it could take 200 years, but at the end of the day, the legacy will prevail.
I see Buki has joined us. Buki, we were asking a interesting question about legacy. I don't know if you're here with us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay, so we were asking about, Jesse mentioned about, creating a legacy and making sure that, over time, what you set out to do remains, true to who you are, and people can remember that. And I know that you've been able to work on different brands, and you've been able to even work with Fela, and it must be interesting because he had quite a story, and it must have been hard to translate it through generations, because that's somebody who over time, that imagery, at least people can still remember this giant. So in your opinion, how hard was it to make sure that, working with such a narrative, how hard was it? And what would you say are the key things that people need to pick on if they want to keep such a narrative true, a true African narrative?
So in terms of Fela, what I worked on was Fela on Broadway when it came to Nigeria. And as you know, Fela on Broadway is not African owned. The content is, and I think that Fela's legacy and his history has been passed down for years, word of mouth, your parents, what you've heard. I think that there's a lot more that we as a people could have done with Fela. Unfortunately, another country is telling our story. Exactly what I was trying to refer to. I think legacy is important. And I think that a lot of legacies are preserved through narratives as well, which is why I'm pretty big on that. Yeah, I agree with Jesse in that point that, we all need to leave those legacies and whatnot. What I didn't quite agree on is us not working with global standards, Mr. Jesse. Me and you're gonna have to have a conversation around that. I think that when anyone really says global standards right now, it's just saying that, listen, let's not make the excuses. We should be able to play in the same field with any country and be clearly understood and be seen for excellence. And that's just as simple as that is. I don't want Nigerians strolling late to the meeting and saying there's Nigerian time. Come on, guys. Let's show up on time with the rest of the world, right? So staying true to our culture is important. And it's so amazing you mentioned Fela. We could have done that. We could have.
Yeah, we could have. But now at least we have a learning curve. We have a platform to learn.
I don't know that we do,
Yeah, well, we don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why these conversations that we're having are extremely important, so that people.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Becky. Thank you, Elodie. Thank you, Jesse. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. You know how when we start talking about Africa, we're also passionate. We can go on, like I was saying. We might even draw puzzles and come back and come back for round 2. Take a break, take coffee, and still come back, and we'll still be talking about it because we're so passionate about it, and we're so passionate about telling the African story, which is why we're here. I see we have one question actually. And I'll just leave that for one person actually to answer, and then I'll give everybody 1 minute, just to give in your final words. The question says, and this question I think is from Zogo, Claire. It says, with regards to meeting quality standards at our work sites, how do you cope in a situation here? I guess that in a situation where the hierarchy doesn't fully understand the stakes of the narrative with regards to the overall company objectives. I'm not sure who might want to answer that. Any one of you might want to quickly help Zogo here. Jesse, maybe?
Okay, well, I think that my quick suggestion would basically be if you're in a company where the hierarchy doesn't understand, that 2 things you can do is that you can be persistent. First of all, maybe change your approach. Everybody needs to be convinced. It's not because you have a great idea that it's a great business or something like that. Make it brief. It's not because you have a great idea that it's a great business. So you need to be able to fine-tune your proposal. Secondly, maybe change your environment. Change your environment, find better people, work with people that understand what you do. Or at the end of the day, there are just some things that take time. Like I said, it might take 50 years. It might take 100 years. There are many things we do now that were written by people 100, 200, 300 years ago. So I would suggest you can either be persistent, change your environment, or change your approach.
Nice. I'll just ask you to give us, your final words in 1 minute. If you would have to make any final recommendations on what the African narrative should look like, where we should be going, what sectors we should be focusing on, what would be your final recommendations for us?
Yeah, 2 things. The first thing would be to contribute to the narrative. We should all be content producers in one way or the other. It could be via social media, it could be what you do, it could be your life. Find a way to contribute so that your life doesn't just go through and there is no trace. Secondly, as each person works on the narrative, look around, and like I said, our narrative should pile up to be a legacy. If it doesn't pile up to be a relevant story, then it wouldn't make sense. 100 years from now, we would have lots of bricks, but no building. So I really, really think that keep having your brick, bring your brick to the table. Let's build something. But let's also, as we're building, look around and make sure that what you're doing fits to what happened in the past, relevant to what is happening right now, relevant to what's happening abroad, Becky, of course, and of course, relevant to what is coming ahead of us.
Nice. Stay relevant, guys. But also, knowing what we can learn from our past. Elodie, maybe if you have any final words in 1 minute, please.
Alors, pour moi, il faudrait continuer à créer du contenu de qualité, raconter nos histoires, créer un storytelling autour des figures de pros du secteur de la communication qui est plus notre domaine, donner la parole aux profils aguerris qui ont vraiment prouvé par leurs actions, par leur expertise, ce qu'ils font, continuer à créer du contenu, que ce soit des documents, que ce soit des lives comme on est en train de faire actuellement, que ce soit des podcasts, du contenu de qualité et aussi miser sur la ressource humaine parce que c'est très important, les compétences, miser sur eux parce que demain, le récit africain se fera par eux et se fait aussi pour eux. Donc, miser sur eux et miser sur des médias forts africains.
Thank you. Boki, any last thoughts? Final recommendations for us?
Not for me.
Sorry, can you hear me?
You broke up a second ago.
So now I was asking, any final thoughts for us, on telling the African narrative? What would your recommendations be?
I think my recommendations would definitely be for a bunch of us to connect and see how we can support one another to actually do that. Jesse said something that was really important about getting, people that know how to do the job. So it'll be very interesting to see specialists, communicators, storytellers across the continent being given a platform to actually connect and actually get some stuff done. I'm very, very interested in that. And if there are any opportunities for that, definitely count me in. Yeah.
So we're all aligned that we need to tell our own stories. We are all aligned that we need to keep a legacy. We're all aligned and agree, as Buki closed off saying, if there was a platform, let's be the one. Maybe this is actually an opportunity. And thank you, Africa Communications Week, for putting this together, because maybe this is truly the platform where multiple people can connect, share visions, tell the story however we want to tell it. And of course, I will close off with a quote from Chinua Achebe: "Until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter." So this is our own chance to tell our own story. This is our time to change the narrative. This is our time to leverage on our voices, the platforms that exist, the people, the resources. We have it all. You can see that we have people who are doing it, they're making it, they've been challenged, they've been bogged down, they've gotten back up and they're walking. And we just want to thank you all so much for joining our session. We hope to be bringing more information as we go. Africa Communications Week will be sharing this, live across their different platforms. But thank you all so much for joining. This session hosted by Image Nation, leveraging on the African narrative. We just want to thank you all again. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Elodie. And thank you, Buki, so much for joining our session and sharing with us your wealth of knowledge. We could not be more grateful. We're glad that we have your stories now to tell. And we'll make sure we'll be telling those stories. So thank you.